Okay, Cody, today I am at the African Burial Ground Monument in Lower Manhattan, and that's where the novel Ship of Souls ends. And we're so lucky because Ranger Doug Massenburg is here today, and he is going to tell us all about this monument.
Welcome to the African Burial Ground National Monument. The African Burial Ground is the largest, the earliest known African cemetery where human remains have been removed, studied, and reburied. Many researchers refer to it as one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the entire 20th century. Hundreds of years ago, here in New York City, burial laws and practices prohibited Africans from burying their own within the city limits, below Wall Street. So there was a barren and desolate area on the outskirts of the city where Africans buried their own. However, as the city began to grow northeast, that area on the outskirts of the city became important. You see, they had to put houses and businesses in the area. In 1794, after approximately 100 years of use, they would close that old African burial ground. And to add insult to injury, they knocked down the hills in the area, brought the dirt over, and covered the cemetery. It was buried 24 feet below. Houses, businesses were put on top. 1904, the underground trains, the subways put here, crushing, destroying remains. By the 1990s, many assumed that old cemetery had been obliterated, wiped out. But they were wrong. While constructing the Ted Weiss Federal Building in 1991, they would rediscover this old African cemetery. And instead of stopping and telling the people, they were more concerned with putting up that building. So they started removing, taking the remains of Africans from the ground. Most were wrapped in newspaper, all were placed in cardboard boxes, and they were stored like books in the basement of a gym at Lehman College in the Bronx. This would lead to outcry and protest as the people would come together to stand, to sing, to pray together in honor of the ancestors, their effort to stop the exhumation, the removal of remains. They continued to put up the Ted Weiss Federal Building despite protests day in and day out. Finally, after a year and a half, Congress did step in and stop the exhumation, the removal of remains. There was a plan to add on to that Ted Weiss Federal Building to put 4 more levels here in the back. They had actually counted approximately 200 more remains in this area, but because of the act by Congress, the remains were left in place, simply covered. Those remains in the basement of Lehman College would be removed, taken to the top black college for the study of human remains in this country, the Howard University, located in Washington, D.C. And there, for approximately 10 years, researchers would study the remains of Africans buried in the 1700s and 1800s. They found evidence, in some cases, that women, from carrying heavy objects on their heads, they crushed their skulls. Men and little boys were being worked to death, constantly lifting heavy objects, which caused the muscles to swell, leaving marks within the bone. This would not have been possible when the remains in the basement at Lehman College. So this is the significance of the African burial ground. In many cases, they could determine if it was a man, woman, or child, the approximate age, causes of death. In 2003, the 419 remains which were taken from the cemetery were brought back to New York City and reburied here in the ancestral burial grounds. Later on in 2007, this memorial would open to the public. The memorial, designed by Rodney Leon of Eris Architects. Soon, the African Burial Ground will host Youth Week. In October, early October, events which honor youths and our community. We invite you to come and spend some time with the African Burial Ground from October the 4th through the 8th. I'm Ranger Doug. Thank you for visiting the African Burial Ground National Monument.